Masechta Menochos, Daf Ayin Hey Amar Aleph, we're starting from the Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, from the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Kol HaMenochos HaNasos B'Kli, all Menochos that are done in a Kli Shares, in a Keli, in a special vessel that sanctifies it. Ha'uneis Sholish Matnes of Shemen. It needs 3 givings of oil. And here he goes backwards. Yitzika, after it's already baked, he poured the oil when it was hard, and then he goes a step before it. Belila, when there was flour, he put in oil and he mixed it with the flour and the oil. Matan Shem Bekli, Koil Masiyasan. He's going backwards. And before you even put in flour, they put in already oil. So those are the 3 stages. You want to go the other way, they put in oil first, then they put in the silas, put in oil and mixed it.
After
cooked, they put smear on top. Very good. Chalois Bailalan. Bailalan is the second stage. There's the putting the oil, and then putting the flour, and the second stage putting oil to mix the flour with oil.
Okay,
So by Chalois, they had Belila. Chalois Bailalan. Dibir Rabbi, those are the words of Rabbi. Chalois, by chalois of a machvas. There's the minchas, the frying pan, the shallow pan, there's the deep pan, and there's the oven. They put in the oil if it was fried or if it was baked. Chum argue, no, he says when they put in the oil, silas, when it was still flour. Says the Mishnah further, the mincha. You got it so far?
Yeah, they put in. We're talking about a specific oil. Marakikim, the middle ground. There's 3 times. Now we're only talking about one of the 3 times.
Now we're talking about a chalis of a mincha that's made in a frying pan, a deep pan, or in an oven.
Okay.
At which stage do we mix it? Do we mix it while it's still flour or after it's baked? So the Rebbe says you do it. But chalis means if it's hot already. The Chum says no, only while it's still silas, while it's still flour, like dust. Chalis tunis blila. He says the mincha of a mafei tanor, the mincha that you make in the oven, there's chalis, and there's wafers, rikikin. So the Mishnah is coming to tell us the difference between chalis and rikikin. Chalis tunis blila. The chalas needs the second stage, the taking the flour and mixing it with the oil. Rikikin meshicha, but rikikin is if it's hardened, that wafer, then you put you smear it on it. Ketzat moishchan. How do you smear it? Kimin chi. So there are 3 different perushim. Others say ki means like an X. You smear it like an X. Others say it's like a test, but it's really a U. The test has a line coming down. It's a U. Others say like a nun. Okay, says the Gemara. So that you do it ki is like a C, which is, you turn it this way, is a U. And the rest is eaten by kahanim. Says the Gemara, when it says kol hamenochos that are done in a vessel, right? In a vessel, what are you coming to exclude? Because not all its actions are done in a vessel. That's what he's coming to exclude. When it's done, because it's baked in not in a kli shares, it's baked in a kli chayil when it's being baked in the oven. So the Mishnah is excluding over there. You don't need the 3 matanos. If the mincha, the deep pan, a mincha macheshes coming up, says b'shem b'tasa, malamet to una mat n'shem b'kli. It says minchas b'shem coming up, soilas b'shemen. Teyaseh, right? Mat n'shemen. So the soilas, when it says the lashon soilas b'shemen, it's mashma that the soilas is in the oil. That's how you should do it. So first you put in the shemen into the kli, and then it says the soilas is placed into the oil that was in the kli. That means that the shemen was first there, because it says soilas, the flour, you're putting it into oil. That means, but it doesn't even say soilas ba shemen. The ba So you took the flour and you put it into oil. That means there was oil already from before in the keli. Okay. Says Gemara ma'kan and just like by minchas macheshes by the deep pan. It says kabanecha and matan shem bekli. You before you put in the soilis before you put in the flour there was already oil. Aflahalan so too by the minchas machvas by the shallow pan where it says the same word kabanecha, which is a gzeda shava. We learn out kabanecha ma shem bekli matan shem bekli. So too there by the shallow pan the oil was placed first and the soilis was placed into the oil. And just like now we learned the reverse. We learned macheshes from machvas. Just like by the shallow pan, you needed yitzika. Yitzika is the last one. If it's fully baked, you did a smearing.
Okay.
You did like the U, like I told you.
X,
right. So, ubelila, and you also needed the second stage of mixing. Avkan yitzika belila. So too by minus macheshes, you needed the yitzika.
It's stam oil or it's
stam oil.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean best oil, but it's
not like anointing oil or shemen and no special oil.
No, but not even like by the Menochos. You mean the drop that comes out. It has to be the purest oil. Stam oil. Yeah. In the Mishnah we learned chalois beilalan. As chalois, they did the second stage. They would mix it. By chalas shaminchas of machvas, macheshes, and mafetana, they would have the second stage, and they would mix it with oil, even if it was fried or baked. Divi Rebbe. Chamleina said no, only while it was soilus. Before it was baked, they already mixed it with oil. So the Gemara brings the mucker, the sauce for it. Taner Rabbar Migalat, soilus belula ba'shemen. It says soilus. Look at the word carefully. It says as soilus. It was mixed into oil. So you learn out that it was mixed while it was soilus, and the same thing by the other Menochos. It was Rabbi says it says in the pasuk chalois beilalan, right? Mm-hmm. He brings the word chalois, not soilus. So he learns chalois shenema, like it says in the pasuk chalois belulis b'shemen. So it's mixed only after it's hard. By lachmei toida, it says the word chalis belulu b'shemen. And the Gemara will explain later on why. But it's impossible to use the oil when they're already hard because you only had a revius oil, and by a toida there were 40 chalis. If it's hard, after you used up the oil for the other chalas, for all these chalas, it was only a quarter of like what your yaitz, the dalit cases, a revius. So he says impossible. There was enough of that. Ela soilus, only when you have to say it's talking about when it's soilus, because it's impossible.
Soilus means fully baked at the end.
Soilus means before it was baked. If it's baked, it's impossible. Big pieces, hard pieces. You see, when it's liquid with flour, you can do it to put it together. But if it's hardened and you have 40 challahs and you have to start smearing, you don't have enough oil for that. There's no way. Maybe after 10 challahs, you're gone. Maybe even before that.
Drizzle it?
No matter what, try. You'll see. Even drizzle a revius on a challah. Take one challah, you'll see you're gone. Says, you want a Kate said, he said, how does he do it? So he says, Noisan, look very carefully where he says you place the oil. Noisan, Shem, and Bikli. So you have over here, again, so the Rabbanim brought a raya. It says first, Soilas Belulu Bashemen. So from this that it says Soilas, the word Soilas, we learned that it mixed with Soilas, right?
Yeah.
And not after it's fried. Rabbi says, it says, Chalois Boilalon. So the Chachamim said to Rabbi, hey, if it's chalis, there's impossible. By lachmei toida it says chalis, and you can say you're beilalan when it's chalis. There's not enough oil for that. The Ketzerei say, how do we do? The Gemara wants to know. The Gemara concludes, according to the Chacham, how do we do the procedure? So you take the matna shaman by all the menachos. It goes like this: Noisin shem bikli. You first place the oil into the vessel. Before you put in the sailors, before doing anything. Then you place the sailors into the kli where the shemen is there already. And once you place the sailors there, and you place oil on it, and then you mix it. the lasha and you knead it, the oifer and you bake it, upeisa and you break it into pieces. And then the nois nala, shemen the koimetz, and then you place another shemen and you make a kmitza. So you see, when is the belila done? When is the second stage done? While it's still while it's still silas. You put it on baila, you knead it, you bake it. But when did you mix it? Before then you kneaded it, then you baked it, broke into pieces, and then you place shemen.
Raw ingredients.
Yeah. Rabbi Yoima, it'll look like it's the same thing, but it's not. Rabbi Yoima says chalos, by the way. You mix it as chalos. You never, like it says in the pasuk, chalos belulis b'shemen. Chalos mixed with shemen. How does he do it? It says nois Hashem b'kli. The first stage is the same. There's oil before you do anything. Ben nois na, and you place the soilus into the kli, right?
Yeah.
Did you do yet the second oil yet? No. What does he do with the first oil? The lasha, he needs it, and he bakes it, ufaisa, and breaks it into pieces. Now comes the second stage. We're talking already if it's hard.
Right.
Then it says, then he places the oil and he mixes it.
These are the wafers.
It's already if the wafer's hard pieces. And then he puts the third stage. If you look before, the bailalon happened still before he needed it. He poured a second time oil and kneaded it, and then made it hard.
Right.
And only the third time that he put oil was after it was hardened. Here, even by the first time, the oil that was there from the inside the kli before, he already started to mix everything, and he baked it, and then he put it a second time, the second stage after it was hardened. Then a third time he poured it on the pieces again.
So once he broke up, once it was hard, he broke it up, then the third time. As opposed to the raw ingredients, mixing it, and then after it was cooked.
Right.
So it's basically 2 times after it's cooked.
Right. And according to Rebbe, it's 2 times before it's cooked.
Got it. Okay.
Very good. That's the best way to put it. Okay. We asked before, the Chacham said to Rebbe, how could you say you're doing it as chalos? It's impossible to mix the by the lachmei Torah if it's chalos. To come Rebbe, what is this that the Rabbanan said to Rebbe? That it's impossible to mix the oil when it's chalos. We know there's only a revius of oil. We know there were 40 chalos. With the toida, you brought 40 chalas. There's no way that a revius of shemen would cover all that. We learned in the Mishnah, chalas tu'unis belila. The chalas needs mixing with oil. Or the kikim, but if it's the wafers, meshicha need the smearing on top of it. It says chalois belulois. It says chalois that was mixed, and we learn out that the chalas alone was mixed with oil. But not as wafers. Wafers, it was not mixed. Rather, it was mishuchin. You remember, it was smeared.
Right.
Mixed means you mix it in, as I say this.
Right.
Mishicha means you just give a smear on the top, either like a U, a X, or whatever. Says Gemara.
Which takes a lot less.
Yeah. So he says, Sheyachel, I would have thought, Valoidinu. He says, I would have made a kavachema. It doesn't need the smearing, but it does need a mixing of the oil in it. The kicking that does need the smearing at the end. Doesn't it need the second stage too of mixing it with the flour? That's why the Torah writes by chalois it was mixed with the oil. But the kicking was not mixed with oil, only with oil was smeared upon it. It says the Gemara from this that it says rikikim meshuchim, that the kicking were smeared, and not the chalas meshuchis. Why does he have to say that? Because sheyachal, I would have thought that the chalas should be meshuchis. Madach, we're kicking wafers, don't need the mixing, but tuna meshicha does need a smearing on top. Chalas shatunas belila, chalas that does need a mixing, ain't a din shatunas meshicha. Shouldn't the din be that it needs the smearing. That's why it says only the Rikikim needed the smearing on top and not the Chalois. In fact, the Yimana might Talmud, well, how do you prove that? How do you say only Rikikim needs Meshuchim and the Chalois doesn't? And how do you know the Chalois is the only one that needs Belulin and not the Rikikim? Maybe both of them need both. Right. Says Yimana, because we don't find anywhere in the Torah that the Torah should that the Torah should cross it, should cross from chalis instead of belulin should say chalos meshuchis, or rekikim belulin should say rekikim meshuchim say rekikim belulis. We don't see the Torah ever crosses it. Now, if it's by both of them, you need smearing and mixing. Yeah. So the Torah should sometimes cross and reverse the word language. But no, the Torah always sticks to the same language. Chalos is belulis, it's only mixed. Rekikim wafers, meshuchim. You don't find the reverse; it never crosses. So that's how we know it's specifically what the Torah writes, exactly like it is. In fact, that chalis is only belulim and rekikim is meshuchim is smearing. Kate said moishchim. How do you smear the wafer? Says you want to come in key, like a C. Key is like a C. Vashon nechol. My come in key. What does it mean to me key? I'm kind of come in chi yavani. Like a nun, like a chaf yavani, like a. So I told you, there's X, there's U. Rabbanan learned a mincha that comes from half of chalas, half of wafers, maybe like shaman v'chitzeyu. He takes a leg of oil and he divides it in half. Chetzei lechalas, chetzei lekikim. Half of the oil goes for the chalas, half goes for the wafers. Ves chalas beilalan, and the chalas he mixes it with the oil. Urekikim meishchan, but the rekikim he just smears it. Umeishach as a rekik al pnei kulei. Here you see an argument. He says the way you smear it. Yeah. He says you smear it upon the whole wafer, and you don't do. He says you smear it on the whole wafer. And you don't smear it like a U or an X, like we said. Here, Reb Shimon says that it's done. He says, I'll play the whole thing. And the rest of the oil, what do you do with the rest of the oil? You put it back and you mix it with the chalos. Okay? Says the Gemara, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Reb Shimon Moishchan Kimin Chi. Reb Shimon argued. He says, no, it has to be specifically smeared in like a C or like a U, like an X, not on the whole wafer. That's one thing he argues. Ushar Shemen, and the rest of the Shemen we said before, the Tanakhama says, you put it into the chalis. Here he says, Nechel HaKanim, it's eaten by the Kanim. Tanya Yidach, we learned in another Braisa, Rekikim Haboy Mifnei Atzman, maybe look Shemen. Rekikim, the wafers that come on its own, not with anything else, you bring a lug shaman, you keep on smearing and smearing until you get rid of the whole oil.
You dip it, whatever, right.
Yes. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Moishchan Kimin Ki. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda says you just do it like a U or C or a Nun, X, or and once you do that smear, the leftovers go to the Kahanim. Okay, exactly. Mishnah. Let's see where we up to. Kol Menochos Anas b'Kli Tuna Psises. The Mishnah says any Menochos that's done in a Kli, it's done in. It needs to be broken up into pieces. In fact, the Gemara L'Miyotimai.
Mishnah.
That's the whole Mishnah. It's a big Mishnah. So the Gemara
L'Miyotimai.
Oh, you're doing Mishnah's Balpeh.
Now I can't.
All the Menachos have to be broken into pieces. Says, what are you coming to exclude? You're saying bikli. Only those that are made in the vessel has to be broken up into pieces. That the shtei alach v'lach ma'panim, they're not considered as made in a kli. Sometimes it is, but there's mafetana that has in a kli, but shtei alach v'lach ma'panim are not done in a kli. Okay, it's done with a non-kli sharis, meaning it's with a kli of chel, the tanner, the oven. And they do not have to be broken up into pieces Only those that are done in the Kli Sharis, the minchas that are done in the Kli Sharis, have to be broken up into pieces. It says by minchas machmas, pasois oisa pisa. Mincha. It says that you should break it up into pieces, and then you have the word mincha. Of course, we're talking about mincha. What's this extra word mincha? L'Rabbi says kol hamenachos lepsisa.
Mincha is one offering, the same offering that was offered every day is the carbon mincha.
Mincha, yeah, minchas chavitin was 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon by the minchas kohen HaMashiach.
But you never else brought a mincha offering except for the time mincha.
There was minchas nadava, minchas nadarim. Yeah, that's all minchas.
So mincha means the time of
flour.
Day.
No, mincha is the flour. That type ingredient of a mincha is flour. Okay, says the Gemara, what do you have to say mincha if we're talking about mincha? Well, tell us all the menachos lepsisa, even the mincha of a mafetanor has to be broken into pieces. I would have thought, okay, let's include the shtei alach mapanim, that it has to also be broken up into pieces. When it says oisa, it's exclusion. Oisa meaning only this one has to be broken, and not what? To exclude the shtei alach mapanim, they don't get broken up into pieces. Says the Gemara, you remember Yitzika is the last stage of oil if they became hard. So the word mincha is again actually rabbis kol hamenachos liyitzika, that all menachos have to be smeared with oil. I would have thought you would include a mincha mafetana. It has to that mincha has to be smeared with oil. The reason why Rashi says, the reason why you don't say yochel, I would have thought lechem, the shtei alechem lechem apanim, because they're not made with oil. So it's not. I would have never even thought that it should need yitzika. That's why he says a mincha that's made in the oven. Allah is mashma an exclusion that only on the menachos that are done in a kli and not mafetana. All the other menachos, but not the mincha of a mafetana. Oitzi, so maybe I should exclude only as a chalis. Only the chalis should not need the smearing of the oil. But maybe if it's wafers, you do. How do you know to exclude the wafers by a mafetana? We have another exclusion. One for Allah for the chalis and the he for the rikikin. In fact, in one of my Talmudah, what is this drasha that proves that the one that is excluded from smearing the oil is a mincha that's made in the oven? Maybe it's coming to exclude a mincha that's done by kainim is excluded from yitzika. Rabbi said, here we had two miyutim, Allah and he. Miyutim, two exclusions. Okay. So we excluded by mincha mafet tana that Allah goes that the chalis that's made in the oven doesn't have yitzika, and the he comes to exclude the rikik and the wafers. But if you're saying it's going on minchas kainim, you only need one exclusion. From this time we have two exclusions. Minchas mafet tana, because if it was coming to exclude the minchas kain, it would have been enough with one miyut. Starting next Mishnah, minchas Yisrael, the mincha of Yisrael, koifel, you bend it over once and then twice, a second time. Koifel echel shnayim, shnayim laba. Well, you bend it over once into two, and then you take the two, you fold it over again, and it becomes four. That's what you do with the mincha of Yisrael. Umavdil, and then you break off pieces into umavdil means you break off these four pieces, but minchas koyanim, a mincha that a koyin brings where there's no kmitza, minchas nedava of a koyin, there's no kmitza, koyfel ech l'shnayim, l'shnayim l'haba, you do divide 1 to 2, 2 to 4, but you don't break it off into pieces. Minchas koyim Mashiach, lo yayin mekapla. But the minchas of the Kohen Mashiach that he brought 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, they wouldn't fold it over. The minchas of the Kohanim and the minchas of a Kohen Mashiach that brought 1 in the morning, 1 at night, did not break it into pieces. Why not? Because there was no kmitza performed by the minchas Kohen and the minchas Kohen Mashiach. All those menachos that didn't have kmitza didn't have the breaking of pieces. The kulam pesam kizesim, and all of them are broken up into the pieces of a kizayis. Tani Rabbanan Yolan, If the Torah would have only written pasos once about breaking pieces, Yachal, I would have thought that you have to break the challah l'shnayim only into 2 pieces alone because of pasos. Tamalayma pitim to tell you that you have to fold it over and break it up into 4 pieces. Fold it up into 4. And break it up. Pitim. If it would only said pitim, Yochyasadam Peirunim. If it would only said pitim, I would have thought you have to crumble it. Tamalayma oisa. That's why it says. Since it says so that's why it says oisa dafka oisa. Only that mincha itself. Leyesh livsa livsisa v'loy psisaha. Only the mincha itself you break it up into psisim, into 4 pieces, but not its pieces itself. You don't take each piece and you start breaking it psisim into a whole bunch of little pieces. Okay, so how is this done? So he says minchas yisol koifel echad l'shnayim u'shnayim labo ma'avda. A minchas yisol, a mincha that's a regular yisol brings. He folds it over once and then twice into 4 pieces. Umavda, he breaks it up into 4 pieces. Minchas koinim, koinim Mashiach. They were divided, but they wouldn't break it up into pieces. In fact, what about Anant? But we learned now Mishnah Shemichas Kayim Mashiach Loyhayim Kapla. They didn't even fold it over. Amarabba Kavanas of the Mishnah means that Minchas Kayim Mashiach ain't a Kapla laHaba. They wouldn't fold it over to 4 of Kapla l'shnayim. They did do a folding, but into 2. We learned in the Mishnah of Sheminayim Minchas Kayim Mashiach Ein B'Am Psisa. The Minchas of Kainim and the Minchas Kainim Mashiach did not have any pieces. Amar Rav Yosef, Hai Chavitza, a new din. This Chavitza, like French toast, it's not French toast, something that you cook in a pot and you throw pieces of bread. These were Perun Kizayas, meaning if there is one piece amongst the pieces that has the size of a Kizayas, we do make the bracha of Hametz Lach Menaretz. But if amongst the pieces there's not a piece that has the size of Kizayas, then we make the bracha Benim Zenis. So we're telling you that if somebody had food, Amar Rav Yosef, so that if somebody had Ayin Hay on the base 2, so he says if somebody had made a food, but has pieces of bread in it, so if it has the size of a Kizayas, then you make hamaitzi. If it doesn't, you don't make hamaitzi. Why? Because the cooking takes away the bracha of hamaitzi if it's less than a zayis. If it's still a zayis, you still have the tzura of the bread. You still make a hamaitzi. But if it's less, and because of its cook, it's less. Or Taisa says because it was mixed with other ingredients, it loses the hamaitzi part of it if it's less than the zayis. When do I know that the pieces, only if they have the size of a kizayis, then you still make hamaitzi? Says the Gemara, the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa. If somebody was standing and being Makar Menochos in Shlayim for the first time, doing a mitzvah for the first time, you make the shechiyanu. Nitalan. And when the Kohen would take the mincha la'achan to eat it, what would he say? Amaytzi lechem min haaretz. Utnan, and we learned the kulam b'sitzim kazayis. We learned all the pieces have to be a minimal of kazayis. And how do we know it was cooked? Because you had the mincha machvas that was fried, or minchas macheshes, right? You had fried, and what was the other one? Cooked and fried, whether baked and fried, yeah. So you see, nevertheless, if it had the size of a kazayis, you still make hamaitzi. Abaya said to Rav Yosef, because you're saying, but if there isn't amongst them a kizayis in the pieces, then it's mezainis. So what are you talking about? We learned the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel, according to the Tana of the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, the Amma Mefarcham, you take the Menochos and you break it up into tiny powder pieces, until you bring it back almost into flour. Till you bring it back to flour. You're going to say you don't make hamaitzi. And if you're going to say that you don't make hamaitzi, I got a problem. Latani, we learned in the Braisa. Likit mikulan. If you took a bunch of little pieces of bread and it added up to a kizayis, he took a bunch of pieces and added up to a kizayis. On Pesach he ate it, this bread, Chametz, even chametz. So if he ate it was bread which was chametz. On his kares, he gets the punishment of kares, even though each piece is less than the kazayis, but he brought it together with kazayis. He's chayiv kares. And in matzah, if he took a bunch of pieces which was matzah and he made a kazayis, other gets Pesach. So you see, you don't have to have a kazayis for the amaitzi to be chayiv. To be chayiv on chametz b'Pesach is even if it's crumbs that add up to kazayis, and to be yoytze matzah b'Pesach, you add up the crumbs and it becomes a kazayis of a matzah. He says, you want to have my skin to share your son. Here it's talking about that he attached them together. If it's talking about he attached them together, this that we learned in the Hemshech of the Brais, this is only if he ate it like the time that it takes to eat a half a loaf of bread. He says, if the Brais is talking about that he needed these little pieces into one piece, he should have said achali, and it says achlon in achlan b'lashon rabim. If it's one piece that he attached together, he should have said achalei b'lashon yachid. Says you want to lahachid ma'askin. Only this is how you have to learn pshat. B'bam b'lachim gadol. If the pieces, even if it's less than a kazayis, when it's coming from a humongous piece of bread, which is so chashuv, so then even if it's less than a kazayis, you make hamaitzi. But if it's coming from a piece that's only a kazayis, and you took off a piece, a lechem, then it's not going to have a din like a lechem. It's going to be a mezainis. What's the maskana of the negeya to the bracha of these pieces of bread that are cooked? He says even if it's crumbs that don't have a kazayis, you make hamitzi. Not like Rabbi Yosef said, you don't make. This is only if it still has the tzudas halach in the form of bread.